My name is Jano Cabrera. I'm Senior Vice President for Corporate Relations at a small mom-and-pop restaurant called McDonald's.
How long have you been there?
A little less than 3 years.
Talk a little bit about your career trajectory after you left college.
Mm-hmm. So my career trajectory, after I graduated from college, I came to Washington, D.C., and I started as a federal budget analyst, working for a small think tank in town. I made my way to Capitol Hill, and as is often the case in life, sometimes you meet someone, you eat something, you go somewhere, and it just kind of clicks. I was on Capitol Hill, and the press secretary at the time left. I took over on an interim basis and just loved communications. From there, I received a cold call from the White House. Vice President Al Gore's office was looking for somebody. I still can't believe that that call came my way versus me making a call. I don't know who to thank for that, but I went in, interviewed, got the job, worked at the White House, and then from there, headed communications for a number of different presidential campaigns. By the end of 2004, I headed communications for the Democratic Party, and then I took a break from politics. I went somewhere sunny and warm, Baghdad, Iraq, where I helped the TNA, the Transitional National Assembly, on the work that they were doing, later Purple Finger elections. Then I came home, and I think life comes at you in chapters. That concluded my political career. I then went into corporate consulting. I worked at a firm called Burson Marsteller. It's a global public relations firm. Rose through the ranks, was worldwide vice president at the firm, and then decided I was ready to start another chapter, and this is actually being inside a corporation, and joined McDonald's in 2015.
Did you actually study public relations in college?
Well, I studied political science, so sort of. I sort of studied public relations by doing that, but my focus was political science.
And have you seen political communications change over the past 14 years since you've been in that world? What's different about it now?
Yeah, I mean, so much. When I was at the White House, for example, I still remember thinking, well, we have to stop and watch the evening news. And the advent of cable news was still a novelty, and there were debates as to how important it was. The internet was in its infancy, and the idea of social as a medium for news just was non-existent. And I think the world of today, really, the opportunity that it provides people is that information flow is now more than ever. It's not unidirectional. It goes in two ways. The example that I think of is that newsrooms today have to balance views and value. And what I mean by that is, before, if you worked at the Washington Post prior to Twitter and shares and likes and all of that, if you thought a story was important, you needed to sell it to the editor. And she or he would say yes or no. Now, there's a different dynamic occurring where people write stories, and some of that is being driven by, do I think this is going to generate views? Am I going to get clicks? Because partially, that's how people are measured today. And it's a different dynamic. Understanding that the debate that is occurring there is indicative of a larger transformation that's occurring in media is something that's radically different.
Does that make public relations more challenging?
Makes it more fun. Look, I think when public relations began as a craft, going back as far as you want to say it, could be the guy that was selling the elixir from the back of a stagecoach if you want. It was simpler, but like any craft worth mastering, mastery comes with complexity. And it is much more complex today than it ever was. And I mean it when I say I think it's more fun, because the more tools you have in that tool chest, the more you can build and create and do so in a way that you look back and you're proud of the work.
So You said that, the Gore folks reached out to you. You're now communications of one of the largest corporations in the world. Without being too humble, what do you think it is that people saw in you that said, yeah, this is the guy?
Well, I think people make all sorts of mistakes. What drives me in public relations, and possibly this is what people saw as I've gone over the course of my career, is I am interested in what's new. I am without any doubt interested in the changing landscape. And what's different about today also is just data reveals so much of what's working, whereas before it was a bit of a guessing game. That data, I don't think determines strategy, but it can inform a really smart strategy like never before. And at the end of the day, while I'm in the field of communications, I do consider myself a numbers guy. I consider myself somebody who can look at data and understand it, and from that develop a strategy. So I think the world of today kind of matches up with the interests that I naturally have.
And was the transition from political communication to agency to client, was that a smooth transition, or were a lot of things you had to learn along the way?
I think as I think about transitioning from politics to agency to now client side, the analog that's in my head is that it's a bit like triathlete. Right? If you were hiring for a team and you needed somebody who was good all around, and you met a runner, you might say, I think I found him. Or you met a cyclist, you might think, I found her. And met a swimmer. The value of having a varied background is that there are so many times that I pull from all of these disciplines as I look at the decisions in front of me, especially at the corporate level. Because the corporate level itself is complex. And some of the decisions that you have to make from a communications perspective, sure, it might be consumer engagement. And that's probably best learned at the corporate level. But there isn't a corporation around today that isn't concerned about its corporate citizenship as well. And the work that I did in Washington, D.C., without any doubt, informs how we respond as a company. And inevitably, any corporation finds itself in crisis, and working at Burson Marsteller, for me at least, was a wonderful learning ground on how to help corporate clients weather some of those difficult times. So it's all the facets put together.
So what do you look for when you, I don't know if you're doing hiring directly, but as entry-level people coming into the business, what kind of skills, personality, characteristics are you looking for?
Yeah, it is one of these things where I feel over the course of my career, I've probably looked at thousands upon thousands upon thousands of resumes. And ultimately, it boils down to that one-on-one interaction that you're having with an individual. And do I think this person can get along with the team? Do I think that this person can do what it is they will need to do in the job? And will they like it? And because that sense of I enjoy what I'm doing is what distinguishes an employee who comes in and can't wait to get out versus somebody who's discovered the secret to happiness in life, which is to get paid to do what you love. Like, honestly, that is something that is special. I mean, the sad reality is that all of us will probably spend more time with our with our coworkers than we will with our friends and family. And so if you've found something that you genuinely enjoy, like, that's the applicant that I want to work with. That's the person I want to hire. It leads to higher performing teams.
And in terms of skill sets, what are you looking for in particular? What do journalism, public relations students today really need to be focused on to make sure they are hireable?
Mm-hmm. In terms of skill sets for the world of for public relations today, there is no silver bullet, without any doubt. I would put writing at the top of that list. In a world in which we're via text and social posts kind of chunking our language, that's fine because that's the right way to approach that medium. But in professional writing, there has to be a fluency of language that speaks to the audience. On top of that, again, I think that public relations has always been a combination of science and art, but increasingly, it's more science than art. Your ability to understand data is what distinguishes you in the future, without any doubt in my mind.
Do you see any significant changes in the public relations world over the next 3 to 5 years?
In terms of significant changes that might appear in the public relations world in the near term, the one thing that I'm confident of is that there will be change in the public relations world in the near term. And it will likely continue to be in the space that we're currently seeing, which is just interconnectedness changes the game. And we're getting more connected, the world is getting smaller, and the tensions that we're now beginning to see is that outside of sharing within your own domestic space, your friends, your family, the country in which you live, when you're better connected to the world abroad, navigating the differences in culture, language, barriers is something that is fast approaching for brands.
So what brought you to UF?
You know, I came to UF at the invitation of a former colleague of mine, Patrick Ford, who's visiting UF, but also independent of Pat, just the reputation. Also, I live in Chicago, and it's currently really cold, and it's not here, so sure, I'll come.
Picked the perfect time to come. One question, last question. We are, college just received some money from the university for they're calling a moonshot.
Mm-hmm. Is this a shakedown question?
Yeah, exactly.
Is this, how much will I give?
Yeah, and the project's around, it's called Consortium for Trust in Media and Technology. And the goal is that, that the university itself, led by our college, really wants to be sort of the epicenter of knowledge about trust and products that may come out of engineering that help issues of trust and trustworthiness in media. What is your sense of, we're seeing trust in major institutions continue to climb, particularly business and media. How do you view that from your perspective? Is that a significant concern for McDonald's or for you personally, or and how do you address that?
The perception of trust, yes. Is that?
Or perception of trust as an issue, as a declining trust as an issue for companies, and how they address that.
Yeah, I think the decline of trust in large institutions, which it's been declining steadily, but it accelerated after 2008. And it makes sense. These large financial institutions, to some degree, were a proxy for the lack of stability in other areas. And so the concern that people had about big banks failing applied to other large industries. The nature of a corporate player in any space is that the challenges are going to vary over the course of time, and they're going to reflect where we are as an industry. For me, as I think about industry as a whole, we are currently living through a unique period where that trust is being challenged, but it also is an opportunity. What are you doing as a corporate citizen to earn that trust, to explain the good that you do for the people that you serve? And I think that is something that any company can and should focus on. At McDonald's, one of the things that we often talk about is we know that we're big. We know that we're big. We are the 9th most globally recognized brand. We have restaurants all over the world. We can and do use our scale for good. And that is something that we have focused on over the last few years to bring to life and to accelerate. Because when McDonald's invests in things like we're no longer going to use eggs unless they're cage-free, it makes a positive difference not only for the customers we serve, but it has a ripple effect across the industry. We're proud that we're doing that, but that's an example of something that corporations across the board have within their ability to do. And I think it is the coin of the realm today. trust matters.
Okay, last question.
Okay.
What one piece of advice would you give to a public relations student today as they think about PR careers?
In terms of the last piece of advice, or sorry, in terms of advice I would give to a public relations student considering a career today, there have been times that I've met with younger students who are interested in public relations, and I think that there are times that you can come across as playing the part of a PR professional, and it's not Mad Men. It's not even close. There is a rigor and there's a science behind it, and the best advice I could give anybody is the advice that I got from my own father, which is work hard. Like, really understand what you're doing, and that more than anything is going to drive you forward. So